Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the context surrounding Blood Brothers. So for the exam section A, you need to know the inner workings of the piece and how all of those things within it affect the actor and how it would affect you if you were to direct the play. So in this short video, I'm going to whiz through the main points regarding the context of the piece. So here goes. Liverpool, because of its position on the River Mersey, it always was a prosperous seaport during the 19th century. So it is a city of many contrasts with rich and poor. Now in the 20th century, because of the silting in the river, it was a place of financial depression, which led to unemployment and also strikes. There became an increasing gap between the rich and the poor people of Liverpool. Now the people of Liverpool, Liverpudlians are known for their warmth, their hospitality and their wit. Now Liverpool is famous for its football teams and its impact on culture, the Mersey beat, poetry, the Beatles, music and playwrights such as Willie Russell. Now Mrs. Johnson's wit and warmth in the play typify all of these main qualities. Now a major factor surrounding Blood Brothers is unemployment. Now unemployment reached 25% in the 1980s. Start of Act 2, Sammy is already on the dole and the song Take a Letter Miss Jones illustrates how the rising numbers of unemployment are getting larger and larger and larger in Liverpool at that time. Now unemployment adversely affects Mickey's life and tempts him towards crime. When Sammy tempts him with money, he can't refuse. Now, being out of work creates low self-esteem in the characters within the play, particularly for a traditional man like Mickey, who feel they need to support their wife and their family. Now, views at the time were very different to what we have now. Blood Brothers, as we've already said, is set in Liverpool between the 1950s and the 1970s. At this time, people strongly disapproved of things like sex before marriage, and this is obviously why Mrs. Johnson at the start of the play has to marry quickly. Now divorce was uncommon, and this is another reason the neighbours might have disliked Mrs. Johnston. So although in the 1940s, the Education Act had made grammar schools free, working class children had to still pass what they called the 11 plus to gain entry to a grammar school. Now the pass marks were kept deliberately high so few children got in. Now the privileged people got into grammar schools, the less privileged didn't. This was a fact of life for the working classes, and even if they did gain a place, there was no guarantee that they would leave with qualifications, as the school leaving age was 15. Now grammar schools, pupils at the grammar schools always did well. They studied academic subjects and took O-levels. Some of them then went on to take A-levels, while others, under pressure from parents to leave school, they would get a job and bring money into the household, very much needed if their parents were out of work. There were far fewer university places during the 1940s and 1950s, so most people would go straight into unemployment from school. Now another type of school which surrounds the context of Blood Brothers is the secondary modern school. Now children who failed the 11 plus would go to what they called a secondary modern school to be prepared for life in blue collar work, so trades, factory work. Boys would study practical skills like bricklaying alongside academic work, and girls would learn how to cook. Many of these schools were very underfunded and wouldn't have many resources like we do now in school. Now, if pupils were not considered bright, they were not allowed to take CSEs. These qualifications were not worth as much as O-levels, taken at grammar school, so GCSEs are much more inclusive than we study now. More people can access them. So it was common for children to leave school without any qualification at all. It was more difficult for them to get on in life. Now all of this leads on to our main theme, poverty. There is clearly an established link between poverty and underachievement at school. Now Edward is sent to a private fee-paying boarding school, and he would take O-levels and A-levels and then go on to university. Mickey, on the other hand, the other twin, leaves school and goes straight into unemployment. Things go wrong when he's made redundant, whereas Edward has much more secure white-collar job. Now, manual workers, as I've already said, were called blue-collar workers. They were the people who were mostly affected by the closures of factories because of that silting and the trade dropping and the scarcity of work connected, obviously, to the docks and the trade, as we've just said. Now, Mrs. Johnston and her family live quite a happy life in their small house. Now, this house is a council house. Council houses were the homes of most working class people during the 1950s and the 1960s. The terraced houses had a lot of things to recommend them, but they were also cramped and lacked inside toilets and bathrooms. Now, some of you might live in a terraced house, I do myself, but obviously they've been modernised and we've now got inside toilets and bathrooms. Now, these houses didn't have central heating and were heated mostly by coal fires in the front room. Their inner city locations, like in the inner city of Leicester, were often dirty and there were nowhere for children to play outside, and they even rarely had gardens or any outside space. They would just have to play in the street. Now, at the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2, we see Mrs. Johnson very excited about moving house. She's moving to what they called a new town. Now, these were made to improve standards of living. The government moved people away from the terraced houses into new council accommodation in the countryside. Now, new towns were created like Skelmersdale, and existing places were developed like Runcorn and Winsford all around Liverpool. Some high-rise blocks were also built at that time. Now, as I said, at the start of Act 2, when she sings A Bright New Day, Mrs. Johnston's family is certainly helped by their move, although not as much as she hoped. Now, in many ways, it's already too late for the older children, Sammy and Mickey, and the unemployment situation was often worse away from the city because of transport. Now, also, many missed the people and the amenities that they'd known before, the people they'd grown up around, and their support network that existed but vanished around them. Now, uprooting people can cause stress and depression. Some of you might have moved quite a long way, moved from city to city, and it's hard, it's a stressful time. So now we've covered most of the context that surrounds the play. I want to talk to you about why Willie Russell wrote this play. Why does he want to tell the audience all these things? What does he want to make the audience aware of? So this brings us on to his intention. So one of Willie Russell, the playwright's main intention, is to show us the differences, the disadvantages of being poor and being in the working class. Now, the failure to succeed in life isn't always because of the lack of ability, as he tries to make us aware, but a lack of opportunity. Now, this can clearly be seen between the characters of Edward and Mickey. He also wants us to ask ourselves whether this is still true in modern day, in the 21st century. What I want you to do is have a little think about that. Do a lot of the things that surround the context of Blood Brothers, do they still happen nowadays?